$250,000. That is a massive, life-changing amount of cash, right? Picture this, 100 people totally stranded out in the middle of the unforgiving wilderness, tasked with just outlasting each other to split that massive prize pool. Listen, as a survival instructor, I've seen my fair share of wilderness tests, but this one, it completely flipped the script on what it actually means to survive.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, I'm throwing on my grizzled survival instructor hat to run a full after-action debrief of this fascinating 14-day wilderness operation. We're going to break down the field tapes, look at the tactical choices, and figure out exactly why the textbook experts started dropping like flies while a bunch of total amateurs managed to hold the line. So grab your notepads, let's get right into the field tapes.
Here is our game plan for today. We're hitting the ultimate test, evaluating shelters, leadership and morale, the resource trap, cooperation and stability, and wrapping up with my final verdict.
All right, Section 1, the ultimate wilderness test.
Let's look at the raw numbers of our two camps. We've got 100 total participants dropped in the dirt. The blue team, 50 self-proclaimed survival experts. These are the folks who spend months in the bush for fun and can bust out a friction fire in their sleep. Then you've got the red team, 50 absolute amateurs. Their only real advantage was a quick sprint through a big box store before drop-off, where they grabbed things like a giant 24-pack of bottled water, some party mix, and literally a kid's play tent. The mission was simple. Whichever team has the most people left when help arrives wins the cash. Now, initially, it seemed like the experts had this in the bag, no contest. But the wilderness has a funny way of testing your actual resilience.
Moving right into Section 2, evaluating shelter construction techniques.
As an instructor, evaluating these initial base camps was eye-opening. The blue team instantly recognized that the temperature was dropping, so they got right to work building a massive, communal, textbook debris shelter. Just brilliant execution. But the red team? They threw up that flimsy little kid's tent, dragged a standard tarp across the mud, and, this is the crazy part, set up their sleeping area on a dangerous decline where water's naturally going to channel and pool right into their beds. One red team member actually admitted they were just being delusionally positive about the whole setup. Honestly, it makes me sweat just thinking about sleeping in that camp.
Now, to see what proper execution actually looks like, we have to look at a survivalist on the blue team named Seth. He laid out the exact tactical steps for a textbook shelter. Step 1, you gather sturdy sticks to build a strong main frame. And you need a squad of 10 people just gathering wood to make this efficient. Step 2, pile leaves over the frame. But not just a sprinkle, at least a foot thick. That's absolutely crucial. That foot of dead foliage isn't for looks. It provides critical insulation against freezing night temperatures and acts as a natural deflector for rain. Because they followed the textbook, the blue team slept like babies on their very first night, while the red team just shivered in the cold. But hey, a solid shelter is only one piece of the puzzle.
That brings us to Section 3, leadership styles and morale.
This right here is the crucial breaking point. It all comes down to leadership styles. The blue team ran on a Type A control model. Everyone was an expert, so everyone thought their way was the only correct way. The impact? Immediate infighting, literal screaming matches over how to wipe down counters, and rapid self-eliminations. People were tapping out by day 2 just to escape the massive egos. On the flip side, the red team used a democratic choice model. They shared the load, they split their meager rations fairly, and they somehow maintained incredibly high community spirits.
There is a quote straight from the field tapes that just hits the nail on the head. You have 50 survivalists, aka control freaks, Type A people, all trying to be in charge. It is absolutely unbelievable to watch. When you cram that many self-proclaimed experts into a high-stress, low-calorie environment, the camp completely fractures. They had all the hard physical skills in the world, but they utterly lacked the soft skills needed to manage basic human dynamics.
Let's look at Section 4. The resource management trap.
This was just a massive tactical error. The blue team had a participant actively plotting to hide food so the weak members would starve and tap out, leaving more grub for the strong. Well, when some of those hoarders eventually quit, the remaining blue team members found a literal secret stash of potatoes hidden in their shed. Hoarding resources is a textbook error in group survival, period. A lack of trust leads directly to a total breakdown of camp morale. You absolutely cannot survive a prolonged wilderness operation if you are constantly looking over your shoulder at your own teammates.
And then the producers threw in some ultimate psychological warfare, the 50-can challenge. Both teams were given a lifeline of 50 cans of food. But there's a twist. Whichever team returned the most unopened cans after 72 hours would win a reward. If they tied, Neither team got anything. Now, despite literally starving, experiencing severe weight loss, and suffering from debilitating headaches, both camps buried their cans. They chose absolute starvation and misery over the tiny risk of letting the other team win. It was a brutal test of pure willpower, but it also showed a pretty severe lack of long-term strategic flexibility.
Which leads us to Section 5, Cooperation and Long-Term Stability.
This simple little quote from the red team, we share here, became their absolute lifeline in the woods. When their party mix ran dry and they were reduced to splitting single apples among a whole group of people, they didn't turn on each other. They doubled down on a community mindset and shared sacrifice. They even took turns cooking whatever pathetic scraps they had left. Even when the food tasted like literal dirt, they forced it down together as a team.
When you break down the raw elimination data, the primary reasons people tapped out across the board were hunger, the storm, and infighting. But what's really fascinating here is how disproportionately infighting ravaged the blue team. The data proves it. Emotional resilience, patience, and the ability to just bite your tongue when you're cold and cranky are just as vital as knowing how to tie a bowline knot or build a fish trap.
So, this all comes to a head when the ultimate stress test finally hit the camps. A massive, 5-hour torrential downpour. The red team's shelter was objectively terrible. It flooded, their sleeping bags were totally soaked, and their fire pit was destroyed. By all standard survival metrics, they should have been wiped out. But because of their community mindset, they actively worked in shifts to physically hold up failing tent poles, bail out freezing water, and share body heat. Their cooperation is what literally kept their shelter stable. A united, positive amateur team can actually step up and outlast a divided, miserable squad of experts.
Finally, Section 6, the instructor's final verdict.
If you take away anything from this explainer, let it be this totally redefined definition of survival. Survival is not just enduring the freezing rain, or building a leaf hut, or foraging for roots. True survival is successfully managing group dynamics, maintaining camp morale, enforcing cooperation under conditions of extreme physical and mental stress. The blue team mastered the wilderness, for sure, but they completely failed to master themselves. The red team barely survived the wilderness, but they mastered the human element, and that is what stabilized their camp for the long haul.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to chew on. If you woke up stranded in the woods tomorrow, and the stakes were truly life or death, who would you want by your side? Would you rather have an absolute wilderness expert with a bad attitude and a massive ego, or a complete amateur with a positive team-first mindset? The answer to that might just dictate whether you ever make it out of the woods at all. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you in the next debrief.